Chapter 8 of The Watchman, Old Ghosts. Hollis Mason, preparing for Halloween, reaches out to Sally Jupiter. They reflect on the past. At Dan's apartment basement, Dan and Lori run down some leads connecting to the possible conspiracies to take out masks. Upstairs, they're visited by Detective Fine, who's zeroing in on the presumed night owl. In prison, Big Figure and his goons promise to rough up on captured Rorschach. Dawn and Luri break into the prison while Rorschach stands his ground against Big Figure and ultimately kills him in the bathroom. Them three escape with Detective Fine hot on their trail and Dr. Manhattan taking Luri to Mars. At its conclusion, the story shows top-notch goons seamlessly killing Hollis Mason. In Chapter 8 of The Watchmen, the theme of nostalgia is very prominent. The very first panel is a close-up shot of Hollis Mason's award he got when he retired from the Minuteman. In the next few panels, we see a bottle of Adrian's perfume bottle called Nostalgia, and the word bubbles of Hollis Mason, the original Night Owl, and Sally Jupiter, the original Silk Spectre. Their conversation revolves mostly around their days masked as superheroes, and in a few panels shows a close-up view of their picture taken of all the Minutemen. The theme of nostalgia continues when Dan and Lori reminisce about the old times when they tried to break Rorschach out of jail. Lori discusses how it used to be between her and John. Even while Rorschach is in jail, he is confronted by the criminals of his past, which also contribute to the theme of nostalgia. In this panel, we can see the owl on the calendar that Detective Finn is looking at in the background, and this is a metaphor for Dan's alter ego. In this panel, we can see him wearing a smiley face t-shirt, which is nostalgia and renders back to the comedian's button, which has acted as a reoccurring visual motif throughout The Watchmen. Also, the clock in the background has Roman numerals that is similar to the chapter numbers, which is utilized at the beginning of each chapter. This panel shows a strange drawing, the missing rider with a lady painting a strange alien-like creature. The jack-o'-lantern with the candle lit is an obvious reference to the bloody smiley face button, which is a motif throughout the book. Nostalgia is one of the main themes in the novel, and it is even clearly written in the window, which makes it even more prevalent throughout this chapter. In this panel, we see a quote that says, "Who watches the Watchmen?" which is a recurring symbol throughout the whole story about who the Watchman is and what their story is, as well as what they do and who watches over them. This panel is interesting because you can see in the background there is a clock which reads 5 minutes to midnight. This can be a symbolism for how the clock is, or an assumption that the clock is either broken or wound up, and it could also portray how Mason is portrayed old or wound up. The jack-o'-lantern smashing onto the floor symbolizes the smashing of Hollis Mason's skull onto the turf. Also, the blood splattering across Hollis Mason's face in the smashed picture of the Minuteman signifies his death, but it also a continuation of the bloody smiley face button motif that we've been seeing throughout the novel. Another big theme in this novel is called liberation. Rorschach is physically liberated when Dan and Lori break him out of prison. Dan and Lori also undergo liberation of their own. Dan in particular felt a loss when he was forced to hang up his night vision goggles. Dan and Lori are also denied their true identities, their heroic identities for so long, which is also a form of liberation. And lastly, another point of liberation was when Hollis Mason died, because he was beaten to death. The poem that relates to this chapter is called Halloween by Eleanor Fergion. On Halloween the old ghosts come about us and they speak to some. to others they are dumb. They haunt the hearts that love them best. In some they are by grief possessed, in other hearts they rest. They have a knowledge they would tell, to some of us it is a knell, to some a miracle. They come unseen and go unseen, and some will never know they've been, and some know all they mean. So this poem helps relate to this chapter because it helps show the importance of nostalgia, which is a prominent theme throughout the chapter. Dan and Lori reminisce about the old days. It also plays into how Mason was preparing for Halloween at the beginning of the chapter, and at the end of the chapter, the jack-o'-lantern that was smashed on the floor ties that back into Halloween, which is also another reason the author could have chose this poem to help represent the chapter. Another big thing in chapter 8 that I noticed was the prominence of colors red, orange, and yellow. The whole pages would be in just those three colors. The pages and scenes that seemed to be in red and orange were always more with escalating violence, and as the violence slowly started to fade, the yellow and orange became more prominent. I think that Alan Moore chose these colors specifically because they want to represent the active and intense colors, while green, blue, and purple are more neutral and calming colors, so it show a difference and catch the reader's attention.